Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water with Joyce Aldrich. Refresh your mind.
Welcome to this edition of A Drink of Water. It's 15 degrees at 9 o'clock here at CHHA 1610 AM. And this evening I have two guests in studio. I have Goldi Steiner with me tonight, and she is a child survivor of the Holocaust. Born in Hungary, and she came to Canada in 1953 and says, you know what, she blesses the ground of this blessed country. She's joined by Guido Smit, and they will be discussing the Balfour Declaration and anti-Semitism on college campuses. And welcome both of you to A Drink of Water. So happy to have you here tonight.
Happy to be here.
Come on close to that mic. Actually, Guido, you can just pull the mic up a little bit closer, like up. That's great.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Goldie, come on right up to the mic. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Let me hear you.
Sure.
Thank you for having us.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It is good. And, you know, they say, you know, they always say if you want to get something done, ask a busy person, you know. And Goldi Steiner, you're one of the busiest people I know. You're an active member of Hadassah Weasel's Leah chapter, and you're a member of Hebraica and of the Holocaust Center here in Toronto, and for the Canadian Society for Yad Vashem, and also co-chair of the education committee, and my goodness, and you were a catalyst of actually the beautiful Yad Vashem memorial that's sitting in Earl Bales Park. Chair of Raoul Wallenberg Committee, co-chair and founder of the Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights with the late Solomon Ben Zimra, and also co-chair of Canadians for Balfour 100, which is Guido Smit is also a member of. And then again, you know, boy, oh boy, you're a busy lady. And I know there are other things you're doing as well, not mentioned here. So what brings you here this evening?
First of all, I'd like to clarify that I'm not involved in all the things that you have enumerated. Some of those things are
in the
from
past.
the past.
In
yes,
the past.
History, yes. Right now, basically, I have two involvements which are very important to me.
Okay.
One is Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights, which is an organization founded about 10 years ago.
Right.
My partner, who passed away a year ago, Solomon Ben Zimra, he and I, we collaborated and we worked together on, and still do. I mean, I'm basically at this point, I'm just carrying on the legacy of Solomon. What we did in our partnership was Solomon wrote a book. It was a collaboration work, but he did the intellectual part, I did the outreach part. And we formed a team.
That's a very good team, yeah.
Yes, we were a team where each part was necessary to carry on what we had tried to do. And I'm still working on spreading knowledge about Israel's legal rights. My actual present occupation is, and I'm working together with Guido on that, we're both members of the Canadians for Balfour Declaration, this being the 100th anniversary of the proclamation of the Declaration.
Now, yes, and that's what I was actually alluding to, is that you're here because you're going to be having an event on November 1st, are you not?
That's correct.
Can you tell me about that? It's the Reality of the Impossible Dream is the name of the event. Is it?
That's the name we gave our production, which is
it's a theatrical and musical journey. So it's a whole production.
Yes, that's what it is, and we have some very talented and devoted people working on this production. Our producer is Riva Stern, and she has brought together a professional team to create a theatrical presentation. Some people ask us why a theatrical presentation, what has that got to do with the the centenary of the Balfour Declaration. And I will explain why we chose that theme and
Well, I think it's a very natural thing. I mean, what we did with the 150th for Canada, any kind of anniversary requires some sort of theatrical, musical, creative endeavor, and I would think this is a natural thing. So, you decided to do it because
we decided to do it in that format to hopefully attract the millennials, the younger people, who are pretty disinterested when it comes to politics or Israel, or quite frankly, they're more attracted to something like what we are presenting, and we are looking for the younger people to attend. We want the grassroots, we want everybody, but we have a clear focus on the younger people who are not knowledgeable, and education is packaged into this theatrical presentation.
Oh, it sounds really interesting. What kind of music is going to be played? Is it something that's going to interest the young people? You want to encourage them to come. So, what would? Of course, it's a musical, theatrical production. But what kind of music is in there, and what kind of how is it being staged, or
I cannot be too specific, and maybe Guido can tell you more about it in a minute, but I will answer part of what your question. It's going to be a multi-dimensional presentation.
Okay.
In other words, there's going to be a video background, no sound, only pictures, and there will be live actors playing out the educational part, and based on historic facts, actually. Nothing fictional, it is all factual.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yeah.
You questioned the music, and that I'm not sure if Guido can answer you more specifically, but there will be music. We have a professional, well-known musical director. His name is Warwick.
David Warwick.
Okay, yeah.
Warwick. And there will be, like I said, it's multidimensional.
Oh, great.
Guido,
Yeah,
maybe
so
you
Guido,
want to talk a little more about the program.
About the program, sure. If you can do a little bit of that, it'd be great. Fill us in a bit.
Again, I'm not in a position to go into a lot of specifics, but part of the musical direction will be informed by the heritage of the Israeli background, of course, but also by the North American heritage, musical heritage, if you will.
Okay.
So it'll be a combination of Western music, if you will, as well as some of the traditional Israeli music.
That sounds really interesting. So maybe we'll get busloads of kids coming out as well, and getting the schools involved. And are you doing anything like that?
That is certainly our ambition. As Goldi said, we want to bring
younger people.
The younger people in particular, as well as the general public. There's a lot of misunderstanding about Israel's background.
Yeah.
It's a very particular narrative that applies to Israel that is different from the narratives that are applied to other places in the world. I
know. I was just going to say, this is at November 1st at 8 p.m. at the Toronto Centre for the Arts in the Lyric Theatre.
That's correct.
Okay. So you can go to impossibledream.ca if you want to find out more about how you can attend. Now, what you're mentioning, Guido, is very important, because I find that what's happening in the world is everything that's happening in the world, because everything gets thrown onto Israel, I guess, is what is happening in the world, contributing to anti-Semitism. It's sort of like in a strange way, like the more attacks there are in the world, for instance, it seems that the more support there is for those who are actually doing the attacks. Whether it's more, all of a sudden things, there's more support for Palestine, there's more, and Israel sort of, how can I put it, sort of left holding the bag. You know what I'm talking about? And being blamed for all the problems in the Middle East and ultimately the world. And so am I exaggerating there? Like, it just seems to appear, it appears to me that way. I mean, maybe it's not, but maybe it is. So people, there's an attack. They say that's not us. This is the way we are. And then Israel gets blamed and the world says, oh my gosh, Israel's to blame.
We wouldn't think for a moment that you are exaggerating. On the contrary, you're stating it exactly correctly. That the attention paid to Israeli-related issues is utterly disproportionate, and that the proper narrative and a proper perspective about what's going on in the Middle East is very badly represented in the mainstream media as well, but certainly on the social media, which is where the younger generation in particular get their perspective. And so that's part of our concern. It's something that we wish to correct through educational programs that Canadians for Balfour 100 wish to put on in the coming years. And this is our launching event, if you will, our gala.
Well, the 100th year anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which we haven't really talked about yet. We're going to talk about it in the next segment. We got to go to break, Goldi. Just, you want to say something briefly before we go to break?
I'd like to amplify this conversation about education and whatnot.
Yes.
I had today a very interesting experience with a young lady. She's about 22, attending a university in Scotland, and she's the child of very pro-Israel parents, and she thinks she's very pro-Israel. And this is the conversation that I've had with her. Do I have time to finish?
Yeah, you got a minute.
Okay, so I asked her if she would, I gave her an invitation, will she attend the event? And she said no. And I said, I want to ask your opinion why we're doing this in a theatrical form and the way, because we want to attract younger people. So she says, no, this will not affect this will not encourage young people to attend, because they are they are on the side of human rights, and they take the part of the, what is that word?
The underdog?
The underdog, that's the word I was looking for. The underdog. So I said, who do you consider to be the underdog? And this is what she said to me. Blacks, women, and the Muslims.
That actually sounds very racist to me.
And she
to say that these are to signify people like that, like taking actual races of people, because there are so many underdogs amongst all people who are being stepped on and everything. And I do understand. Some of it. We're going to go to break, and we'll be back right after this with more of Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit. And it's not an easy topic. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Don't number us, don't call our name when you want someone else to bear the blame. Don't call our name about the damning crowd. Sometimes you cry it much too long and loud. When trouble comes, no place to turn. You look at us and your hearts burn. Don't number us, don't call our name when you want someone else to blame. You look at us and can't disguise the yellow stars that filled your father's eyes. You can only see what you were taught to see. Who can compete with both our histories? So many times we have to die. We tell the truth, you say we lie. You look at us and can't disguise the yellow stars that filled your eyes. Oh, Israel has a story to tell, one of love and lament. We chose our fate to teach love and not hate, to build a better us down separate ways. We're sure to meet again at the end of days. We'll look each other in the eye. Lion, lamb, both side by side. Our God's the same, gentle and true. We both began in the garden too. Oh, Israel has a story to tell, one of love and lament. We chose our fate to teach love and not hate, to build a better world to come. Not just for us, but for everyone. Not just for us, but for
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Drink of Water here on CHHA 1610 AM. And in studio, joining me here this evening, this beautiful crisp evening, it's 14 degrees, my goodness, finally fall has descended, is Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit. And they're here to talk about the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which we actually haven't really gotten into talking about really yet, so you're not too late if you're just tuning in. And also about the attitudes of people when it comes to that declaration, actually. So Goldi and Guido, we were talking before we went to break about people not wanting to. They want to stand up for the underdog. And that one young lady you said, Goldi, said she wanted to stand up for underdogs, and she actually mentioned blacks, Muslims, and
Muslims
And women.
Oh. Now I think all three of the groups, of which Goldi, you and I are a part of one of those groups, meaning women. Okay, I mean, to say that that's almost saying we're all underdogs, and that we all, which is not true. It is not true. If anyone, it's like, for me, it doesn't seem right to say that kind of thing about any people, So, how do we get around all of that? Let's talk about the Balfour Declaration. I think we could have a whole other show about that one topic, which is, yes, people need rights. I agree. Women's rights, not being Islamophobic, that's very important. And of course, the whole thing with the Black Lives Matter and all this kind of thing. I get it. I really do get it. But what's sort of pushed aside, people forget that in the Second World War, and Goldi, you are a child survivor of the Holocaust, so you are a first-hand witness to this, of people being turned away from country after country after country, shiploads sent back to Germany to die in camps, and when the world could have helped. And now we see the world has a heart to help, and that's wonderful. But, I think there's still, maybe, are the shiploads still of Jews still being turned away in another kind of sense? What's the word I'm looking for? In a way. What's happening? There's a lot of anti-Semitism now. It's on the rise as well. The Islamophobia is on the rise, but also anti-Semitism. So what do we do? What's happening?
Well, one of the, my main activity is as a Holocaust educator.
Yes.
And one of the things that I teach young students who come to the Holocaust Center is to not think of anyone as anything other than an individual, rather than as a member of a group.
Absolutely. I agree.
And it's a very difficult thing to fight because it seems to be wired into us. But the fact is that when you're looking at any given person, knowing what group they belong to, group in quotation marks, whether it's religion or skin color or whatever, really doesn't tell you anything about that person.
Nothing.
And we really need to think about each person as an individual. One of the things that we're celebrating in this show is the wonderful country and society that Israel has become, starting from the impossible dream of Theodor Herzl at the early days of Zionism to today's modern Israel, which is a vibrant, flourishing society, very socially inclusive and progressive. It's known for its innovation, of course. And among many other achievements, it's the first nation to help when disaster strikes anywhere in the world, whether it be Haiti or Nepal
or Mexico.
Any of Mexico.
No,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's just a phenomenal example of doing the right thing for the world, for other people, in a way that wasn't done for the Jews back when the Nazis persecuted us.
No.
So it's part of what we're trying to do here is tell the story about how Israel came to be and why it is that we have a right to be where we are.
Okay.
But part of it is to celebrate what a phenomenal country it has become
So
in a remarkably short period.
So the Balfour Declaration, for those who don't know, is?
It's a declaration by the Foreign Secretary of the British government, issued on November 2, 1917, so about a year before the First World War ended. And what it declared was the support of the government of Great Britain for the re-establishment of a Jewish homeland in the ancestral home of the Jews in the territory known as Palestine. After the First World War, should England have an opportunity to influence events there. As things then evolved, the League of Nations was created after the First World War.
Yeah.
And Great Britain was awarded the mandate. There were 3 mandates awarded by the League of Nations to deal with the territories that used to belong to
the Westminster one was
well,
one?
there was
that was a different one.
The Ottoman Empire was dismantled as an empire as a result of the First World War. There were 3 mandates awarded by the League of Nations. There was Iraq, which was awarded to Great Britain as well. Syria and Lebanon to France, and then Palestine to be managed by the British towards independence in all of those territories. And ultimately that led then to the creation of an independent state of Israel, of course, through a long evolution under British mandatory government.
Wow.
So the Balfour Declaration was the first step in that process, and it laid the foundation for the legal rights under international law for why Israel has a right to exist as the Jewish homeland in its ancestral territory.
Yes, ancestral territory. That's the indigenous peoples.
Correct.
And we have a lot of talk in the world about indigenous rights across the globe, except in one country, it seems.
Exactly,
and also, actually, there are other. I will name 2 others: the Yazidis in Iraq, and the Berbers in North Africa. They are also indigenous peoples. Are really getting having a bad time out in the Middle East and North Africa. Oh, strange. We got to go to break again. It goes really fast. We'll come back. We're going to talk more about the Balfour Declaration and with Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit right after this.
CHHA 1610 AM.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Send them kids to war. That's the Burn Unit. It's a raw song. It's a song that asks, why are we sending kids to war? And if you just tuned in, we're talking about kind of stuff like that, like what's going on in the world today, right, Goldi, Guido? We're here with Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit, and they are members of Canadians for Balfour 100, and we're talking a little bit about the Balfour Declaration, the fact that it's the 100-year anniversary. That's 100 years, 100 years. So we should have peace on Earth right now. Should we have peace on Earth? Should we be sending our kids to war? Should kids be indoctrinated to kill?
They should not be, but unfortunately human beings are what they are, and we have the capacity for real beauty, and we have the capacity for real cruelty. And unfortunately that is the human nature.
It is. So how do we change human nature? I mean, here we are in the physical. We're not spiritual, etheric beings with wings on our backs and playing harps. So education. Okay, so how do we educate them, Guido?
Well, this is in fact one of the real concerns that drove the thinking of Canadians for Balfour 100. Okay. That both in the social media that I referred to earlier, where many of the younger people get their information and their views around the world. The other part of it is life on campuses.
Yes.
And you touched earlier on the proclivity to support what is viewed to be the underdog, except that in many cases the underdog is not really the underdog. Somehow or other, once again, it turns out to be that the bad guys are the Jews, and this is very disconcerting.
It is.
The old anti-Semitism is rising, and this time in the form of criticizing Israel. And in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with criticizing a specific policy of any given government anywhere in the world.
That's our freedom to do so.
Absolutely. But somehow or other, it turns out to be that the government of Israel and the state of Israel is constantly criticized, wildly disproportionate in terms of attention and vituperation compared to any other part of the world, any other nation in the world.
Well, could we
so there's something clearly wrong there.
Well, could we really change the word from criticize to demonize?
Absolutely.
Because there is a difference between criticizing and demonizing.
Absolutely.
I have heard programs on radio, other places, that have talked about Jewish bankers and the Rockefellers and all of this clandestine thing. It's like, all of us, and I think, why are they spreading this hate? Why the lies, And people really buy into it, and they it's all over social media. And yes, Goldi.
I'd like to add something which may be a little bit risky to mention, but the big problem with campuses is that money runs the world, and some of the largest Ivy League universities receive heavy funding that influences their programs, and universities that used to be the basis of free speech and what have you, that stopped being because of funding and monetary influence.
And that has been all along with it.
Political rightness or whatever you want to call it, but there's a huge monetary influence in the universities, which has become a hate fest against all the things that we believe in, all the things that of the American values and civilization's values. So I think there's a huge problem there with that, where they close down free speech. They don't give space for people speaking to Jewish groups who are especially threatened on universities, as is very well known.
Yes,
and this is a very sad situation.
It's in the news. It's not like you're telling a secret. Something that's unknown. I mean, to some people it may seem it may be unknown, but really, it's made the news. It made the mainstream news.
In fact, today there was a news story about Alan Dershowitz, a patently a voice of the left, of the progressive liberal spectrum, socially, politically. He cannot talk freely at Berkeley because he is supportive of Israel. He's very critical of specific Israeli policies, but he's very much in favor of Israel's right to exist. Therefore, he is anathema to this extreme repressive. They're not progressive, they are repressive.
Well, yeah.
Liberals, in quotation marks.
Well,
and there's a real problem there.
Well, and that's an interesting point you just made, because what I'm thinking of is, it's like, please, the thought hasn't left my head. Okay, but basically, what you're saying is that they're trying to, that people are not allowed to speak freely, and yet it's like people. It's not as if they're. Oh, I had this thought. It's crazy, But basically, it's all about. In the universities where you're supposed to have freedom of speech, it's being completely it's ousted. I mean, it's like a reversal of sorts. Like like the book burnings that happened.
Absolutely.
It's like the thought police and in 1984, it's like some kind of crazy backward thing that's happening, and everybody should have the right to free speech and to talk about what they want to talk about. That's a wonderful thing in universities and colleges. That's a place for healthy debate.
It should be, but it just plain isn't.
Well, we live in an Orwellian, distorted world, let's face it, where everything is upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And
Newspeak.
In depth into
Exactly.
M103.
It is Newspeak, for
It
sure.
is Newspeak. History's being rewritten.
Absolutely.
Without going in depth into M103, look what's happening in Canada, where free speech is being shut down from right above, and that influences the young people who want to be with it, and they will. It seems like it's going to become law, Islamophobia, M103. So
Yeah, and there
and
was
the
already a
media
law
and
that
politicians and academia, they're all on the other side of normalcy.
it's unusual, because that whole bill actually does prevent Islamophobia without mentioning it, and it opposes all forms of discrimination, all forms, which is for everybody, and I think that's important. And I think when we start zeroing in on specific peoples, actually, it's not helping. It's not helping
Correct.
people.
It is not
We
helping.
really shouldn't be seeing, like you said, race and color and creed. I mean, those are the three things, or gender. Let's add gender into the mix now, because that's, of course, a very big thing. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. We just have to see people, like you said, as individuals. So, and yet, if you try to say something, it's like all of a sudden you're stymied. And it's like, it's like how do you put it into the right frame?
Well, we
Work.
need to educate, and we do our bit through Canadians for 100, with launching this gala event that tells a story about the Balfour Declaration, how it led to the creation of the State of Israel, and what a wonderful thing, what a wonderful society that has become. And we plan to follow on with additional educational efforts to try and balance that story somewhat, and return some sanity to the discussion.
Yeah. Yes, Goldi.
I'd like to add to the musical presentation the production that we're doing. Prior to that, there's going to be a cocktail reception for what we call VIPs or dignitaries. Those are the politicians that we're aiming to bring into our event, who also have something to learn from what we had from this teaching process.
Right.
Not particularly only Balfour, but to speak out for the truth and to debunk the lies and the claims that are not only against Israel, but in the general society nowadays, having mentioned M103, which is a total distortion of shutting down the truth, basically.
Yeah.
And calling bigots people who will, when there is terrorism and you call it workplace violence, that's not what it is. They have to name things by their name.
Well,
you have to call a spade a spade.
I heard someone today talking about what happened in Edmonton,
Yes.
with this Somali man, and said basically this person was a very erudite person. She was very well educated. She's a specialist in terrorism and everything. But the idea of her actually saying that this was a terrorist act, which it was, And it was a terrorist act. I think now they're looking at it as a terrorist act, but a lot of hyperbole, a lot of dancing around the issue. And yes, this could have happened. The very Canadian thing that we do, which is dancing around the issues.
The lone wolf idea, which is, they're all indoctrinated, and there's no such thing as lone wolf act.
No.
And look at what happened.
Oh my God! I was going to mention. I mentioned Edmonton because that's so weird for us. Las Vegas, horrifying. But in some ways, I looked at Edmonton. And I thought that was, not worse, but it was so unusual. We have to go to break again. It's 9:45 here at CHHA 1610 AM, and we'll come back to more of this very stimulating conversation with Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM, a drink of water.
Yes, this is the last segment of A Drink of Water here on CHHA 1610 AM. And I know you're listening. We want you to be listening because this is an interesting topic we have this evening. Not just about the Balfour Declaration, but talking about also anti-Semitism on campuses. And not just anti-Semitism, but the shutting down of free speech for a lot of people who want to speak on campuses, and where healthy debate is what used to be encouraged and is now greatly discouraged. And also the idea of having healthy discussions about what's real and what ain't. And that's not happening either because there are a lot of dissenters, and it seems to be a big snowball that's rolling down the hill. So Goldi Steiner and Guido Smit, what do you say about that? Big snowball that's coming down the hill. Can you stop it? Really,
well,
can it be stopped? Because the momentum is so great, like it was during the Second World War too. There was a momentum that was so great. The world did rally again. And by the way, isn't it terrible for people to be called Nazis and racists and bigots for speaking?
Yeah, I have a real problem with the way these expressions
they have no idea what that is. They have no idea.
Correct. And
only
it's very disconcerting to me when these terms are essentially debased.
That's right.
And lose their real meaning.
Yeah.
I refuse to be pessimistic.
Good.
So at the moment it does feel like it's a very big ball that, if anything, seems to be gaining momentum. But I also know that human affairs don't run in a straight line.
That's good.
And in any case, you can't give up. You just keep up the battle.
No.
You do the little things that you can in your own environment.
Mm-hmm.
In our environment, we can try and tell our story.
Yes.
We are putting in a lot of effort in making this event happen. We are looking for supporters and financial supporters to help make this happen. And we do what we can.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, I think the truth will come out. But you just have to keep plowing. At the moment, it does feel like it's a major, major battle that is, if anything, running in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I have confidence as in the long run, the true story will prevail.
And I was going to say, to get the true story in a lot of ways, if people want to know more about the Holocaust, for instance, because I think that directly affects what you're doing right now, the Holocaust Center in Toronto, tell me about that and how people can visit it.
So at the campus of the UJA on Bathurst, just north of Shepherd, we have in the Lippa Green building the Holocaust Education Center, where we receive primarily school groups who come in for 2.5 hours or so.
But individuals?
And individuals can come in as well. We have a small museum. We have a staff who will host them. And then, of course, we run Holocaust Education Week, which runs from November 2 through November 9.
Oh, so that's coming up as well.
Very soon.
Okay.
That's my second major activity.
There you are.
Excuse me, apart from the Balfour Declaration. And the third one is helping Yazidi refugees get settled, by the way.
Absolutely. Yes.
We lay on something in the order of 150 programs throughout the GTA during Holocaust Education Week. To discuss many, many aspects of the Holocaust, not only to tell the story of the Holocaust, as important as that is, but to alert people to the dangerous sides of human nature and how we can best battle those impulses.
And signs that are showing up again. Goldi, you want to say something?
Well, in closing, I will only say that I echo what Guido just said. I'm not pessimistic. I consider myself realistic. And my expectation is that just like the Tower of Babel collapsed because it went just too high, that's what I compare the lies that are being spread nowadays against not just Israel, but like I said before, against our civilization, our values, and what have you. That's my hope.
In general, yeah.
And in the meanwhile, what we're doing is setting the record for the day when the Tower of Babel comes down, crashing down.
Wow. So that says everything, to be honest. And I want to thank you both for coming in. We got a few more minutes before we sign off. So the event is going to be this November 1st, which is the day before the November 2nd 100-year anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. So that's November 1st, 2017, 8 p.m. at the Toronto Centre for the Arts and the Lyric Theatre. And you can contact them at impossibledream.ca to find out more about it. And so thank you so much, Goldi and Guido, for coming in. And we're just going to play a little music before we go out. I always like to leave people on a high note, and we've got a song called "Fly."
Thank you for having us.
We're going to have to fly. So yes, thank you again. Actually, yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you to our listeners for hanging in and learning some very interesting facts. Okay. We'll be back next week. Actually, next week is Thanksgiving, so I'll be playing some wonderful music next week, but I will not be in. Okay.
What I'm trying to say changes underneath the heavens. Turn on the light in the age of darkness. Those old ideas.
CHHA